During a lunch on August 28, 2014, 14-year-old Alice Gross left her house for a walk. She told her mother that she would be back by 6 p.m. Alice never got back home and never got to see her mother again. To find her, police had to conduct the biggest search in 9 years involving hundreds of employees. In this video, we'll tell you the tragic story of Alice Gross. Alice Gross's description. Alice Gross was born in London on February 14th in the year 2000. She grew up with her parents and her older sister in a loving and happy family. Alice was a creative kid. Ever since her youth, she liked music, learned to play a piano, and even wrote her own songs. When Alice turned 13, she was diagnosed with anorexia and depression. Despite these serious issues, Alice continued to study music and was interested in fashion design. She sewed herself a dress for graduation day and kept writing songs. Alice had big potential in music, indeed. The day of the disappearance. The summer was coming to an end. Alice was on her summer vacation. In her free time, she enjoyed going for walks. On August 28, 2014, Alice told her mom that she was going for a walk and would be back by 6 p.m. After leaving the house, Alice followed her usual route through the suburb of London where she lived with her family. After a couple of hours, she messaged her father that she would be back shortly. Yet at 6 p.m., she still wasn't home. Alice's parents were always very attentive to her. Because of her anorexia and depression, she occasionally fell ill and could fall unconscious. When she still wasn't home at 7 p.m., they sounded the alarm. They reached out to Alice's friends and found that no one had seen her. After that, the parents contacted the police. Police investigation. The police took Alice's parents' report very seriously and immediately began the search. The police developed a plan. Find out a more detailed route of Alice's walks. Detectives managed to find several witnesses and narrowed down the search area. The next step was investigating CCTV footage in the area. After doing so, investigators quickly got on the girl's trail. She was walking next to Grand Union Canal. CCTV cameras weren't always present on the route, so she eventually disappeared from the footage. After some time, she was noticed in another district located down the canal. The last tape with Alice on it recorded her returning back home. The girl was approaching a bridge over Brent River. That was the last sighting of her. The police asked local media to spread the word and awareness around and help find new witnesses. Thanks to this step, investigators began receiving calls from new witnesses, but their information failed to shed any light on the situation. Detectives kept going through CCTV footage of neighboring districts and questioning witnesses sighted on Alice's route. On the fourth day since the disappearance, Alice's parents recorded a video in which they begged Alice to come back home and asked locals to contact the police if they had any information about the girl. Around this time, the investigation formed two theories about the disappearance. Alice was either kidnapped or she intentionally fled the parents' house. London's criminal statistics backed up the first theory. Frequent kidnappings took place in the city. The same might have happened to Alice in CCTV cameras' blind spot. Alice's depression explained the second theory. Her parents were scared, thinking that her depressed state might have pushed her to flee and, even worse, commit suicide. New Scotland Yard investigation. Alice Gross's disappearance and active civilian involvement in the case created a wide public resonance. The emotional video of Alice's parents touched the hearts of London citizens. On the 3rd of October, the case was forwarded to Scotland Yard. Scotland Yard's detectives estimated the chances of bringing Alice back home as high. Massive searches were organized, involving hundreds of volunteers sweeping the district 24 hours a day. The search wasn't pointless as an important clue was discovered. Near Alice's home, next to the canal, her backpack was found. Furthermore, the backpack contained Alice's shoes she took on the walk. Could she have taken them off by herself, considering that she didn't have any spare shoes? Or were they taken off her by force? The discovery of Alice's backpack and shoes did not calm her parents down, but the police managed to substantially narrow down the search area. The theory about her fleeing the house looked less and less realistic, but wasn't dismissed. Scotland Yard made a decision to publish all the CCTV footage citing the girl in hopes of finding new witnesses. Maybe someone saw Alice that day and, thanks to the footage, could identify her and help the detectives. The investigation continued. At this point, 600 officers were looking for Alice. The disappearance became London's largest case of the last 9 years. A bounty of £20,000 for any information regarding the girl was listed. Detectives asked a cell phone service provider for information about Alice's last location. The location from which Alice texted her father aligned with the discovery of her backpack and shoes. It became obvious that the search should be concentrated in this area of several square kilometers. The territory was thoroughly searched. The area contained Brent River, the bottom of which was also searched. Policemen kept going through the camera footage and questioned witnesses. 2 days after finding the backpack, the police arrested a 25-year-old man suspected in Alice Gross's murder. Another man was arrested the following day. Local media did not have any information on the suspects. Scotland Yard decided to clarify all the details before making any announcements. Both men were released, as no clues tied them to Alice's case. Suspect: Arnis Zolkholms. A thorough search of CCTV footage and new clues found new suspects. On September 16th, more than 2 weeks after the disappearance, the police announced that they were searching for a 41-year-old man by the name of Arnis Zolkholms. It wasn't a regular occurrence to disclose the name of the suspect. The detectives used this method to attract more people to the search of Zolkholms. He was born in Latvia and moved to London 7 years ago. Arnis lived close to Alice and worked as a builder. His route to work was similar to Alice's walk route. Still, Arnis Zolkholms couldn't be questioned, as he disappeared on the 3rd of September, 6 days after Alice's disappearance. He didn't show up at work and didn't answer his phone. Zolkholms' disappearance was an even bigger mystery to the investigation, as it found no witnesses to it whatsoever. Arnis Zolkholms was brought up to the table when the detectives found something alarming on CCTV footage. Investigating the tapes, they saw a middle-aged man on a bicycle ride by the bridge where Alice disappeared just minutes ago. The man was Arnis Zolkholms. The rest of his route was in camera's blind spots. However, the next camera wasn't far away, so logically, the man should have appeared on it several minutes later. He appeared on it an hour later. What did Arnis Zolkholms do for a whole hour on a segment that regularly took him several minutes? The police investigated the surroundings and came to the conclusion that he couldn't have taken a longer route since there wasn't one. There is only one road, and the road was approximated to be the place of Alice's disappearance. Furthermore, the footage showed that Arnis's clothes were wet on the last segment, and this wasn't the end. After 2 hours, Zolkholms came back to the same place and spent 50 minutes in the blind spot. The police tracked subsequent movements of the man. After some time, he bought beer in a store close to his house, and on the next day's morning, he, once again, came back to the crime scene. Then he came back there once again in the evening. Arnis raised a lot of suspicion from the investigation, hanging around in the theoretical spot of Alice's disappearance. Recordings were indirect evidence of Arnis's relation to Alice's case, and the police received an order to search his house. It turned out the man lived there with his girlfriend and 2 daughters. The girlfriend described him as a loving father and a good man, and stated that he would never harm anyone, especially a child. She couldn't provide any information regarding Arnis's location. Scotland Yard focused on finding information about Arnis Zolkholms. New data alerted the investigation of Alice's possible fate. It was found out that Arnis was previously trialed for murder. In 1998, Arnis killed his own wife in cold blood. He carefully planned everything, dug up a grave in a forest, then lured her out in the woods and murdered her. Arnis was also accused of storing unregistered weapons. After serving 7 years in prison, he moved to the United Kingdom and managed to hide his criminal record. In England, in 2009, Arnis was suspected in sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in the West End of London. That case was closed after the victim refused to provide information. With all this information in mind, the theory of Alice running away was faded out by the theory of planned murder. After a thorough search of Arnis's house, the police found a vital clue: a white back panel of an iPhone 4S, the same phone Alice had at the time. The panel was different in one thing: it was smashed. Zolkon's personal computer was also searched. Some indirect clues were found. The man searched for Alice Gross's disappearance case several days after the event. Scotland Yard announced a manhunt for Arnis Zolkons. Detectives were afraid that he might flee back to Latvia and cooperated with European police, but with no success. The truth was, Zolkons was still in London. Victim's body. A month had passed since the moment of Alice Gross's disappearance. An active search was underway this whole time, and it brought results that shocked the public. On September 30th, the police issued a statement. In Brent River, close to the spot of Alice's disappearance, a naked body was found. Due to the time the body spent in the water, identification took some time. Someone put in a lot of effort to make sure the body wouldn't surface. It was tied in the fetal position and wrapped in construction bags that were tied to wooden stumps. The criminal also built a weight using a bicycle wheel and 4 heavy bricks. The following day, the police declared that the body belonged to 14-year-old Alice Gross. The cause of death was asphyxiation, and no evidence of sexual assault was discovered. Noticing that construction equipment was used to conceal the body, the detectives tracked it to the materials from Arnis's workplace. The investigation was missing one key component: Arnis Zolkons himself. Scotland Yard worked with Interpol and local European police, but they still could find no trace of him. The criminal is discovered. The search continued for several days until the 4th of October, when the detectives discovered another body. It was found in the previously specified search area of Alice Gross, in the woods of Boston Manor Park. A hanged man was found on one of the trees. The body had some signs of decomposition, so it took 2 days to identify the man. It was Arnis Zolkons. No one expected this outcome. Instead of fleeing to Europe, Arnis hanged himself and was dead in these woods for a month. Zolkons still wasn't confirmed as the murderer, though, so the work continued. With suspect's DNA on hand, the investigators got even more clues. Next to Alice's body, the police found a cigarette with Zolkon's DNA on it. The lab also stated that, with high probability, the suspect's DNA was discovered on the victim's body. The clue was, once again, insufficient due to the body's state. However, considering that Arnis Zolkons was found dead, Alice Gross's mystery wasn't that hard to solve anymore. Course of events. According to the police version, on August 28th, Arnis Zolkons was riding his bicycle along the same route that Alice took. After noticing her in a remote location, he attacked her and tried to sexually assault her. In the hour he was absent from the cameras, he killed the girl and hid the body, which he initially failed at. His wet clothes suggest that he immediately tried to drown the body, but couldn't find a way to tie it. Arnis drowned Alice's body in several attempts, constantly coming back to the crime scene. After he was done, Arnis lived for several more days and then decided to end his life. Alice's parents were outraged by the government's actions. How could British authorities allow a convicted criminal to enter their country and stay there? The next years they spent in a fight to tighten control over migrant traffic. To this day, they have made very little progress. The end of the investigation. A month after the discovery of Arnis's body, The police collected a sizable number of materials containing different tests and analyses, which confirmed Zalkon's guilt. The folder containing 30 pages of very important materials and undisclosed details of the case was lost by the senior West London coroner, which left it in a train. Only one copy of the documents existed, and police efforts to retrieve the documents failed. Alice Gross's parents did not immediately learn of this loss. When they learned about it, they said the following: "We have looked to the police and coroner to help us through our awful loss. Yet now we learn they, either independently or together, have withheld from us the loss of this terribly sensitive information about Alice. We are extremely concerned, bewildered, and angry, and we have asked for a full written explanation as to what exactly happened and why we were not told." Despite heavy criticism by the public and media, the investigation had enough materials to issue a conviction and pass the case to the court. Considering that Arnis was already dead, the court held hearings that confirmed the obvious: Alice Gross was killed. The funeral was held on October 23rd and was an event of massive scale. Thousands of concerned citizens attended the memorial to honor Alice. The ceremony concluded with an emotional song written and performed by Alice when she was still alive.
Strike